Over the past few weeks during the season of Lent, we've been looking at how the falling moments of our lives are often the moments that are the most filled with potential for growth. Those falling down moments. Thanks to Richard Rohr's book, Falling Upwards, we've had a chance to talk about a few different ways that we fall and grow. Last week we talked about a really painful kind of fall. You know the one. My guess is all of us have tripped in this way. When the first life plan we made for ourselves goes away and a new one has to be put into place. When that life plan to be a doctor goes the way of the reality of freshman chemistry. The life plan of becoming a teacher runs aground on the reality of really not liking children that much. One moment we're a wife, the next moment we're single. Oh yes, and that plan that some of the disciples had, and maybe all of them sort of secretly had, the one in which Jesus was going to overthrow Rome, establish a new realm. When that plan gave way to the reality of a room that, as John Prine might have said, smelled just like death. Enough of us have done well enough on that second try at a life plan that we know intrinsically that falling out of our first idea can hold great potential for reorienting ourselves. Aren't we all glad, for instance, that Walt Disney was fired from his job as a newspaper reporter in California because his boss said that he lacked imagination and good ideas. All of our falling moments hold such great potential. And I love the metaphor of actually just tripping and falling. It just, hitting the pavement. The metaphor. Because falling, that act of falling is sort of humiliating and there's no way around it, especially now in the age of cell phones when some people are tempted to take a picture before offering help. From that splayed out version of ourselves on the sidewalk with a skinned elbow, a run in our stockings, a cut above our eye, coffee all over our best white shirt. Even from that, especially from that, comes our redemption and growth. Today we get to take a look at one more kind of fall that all of us have experienced, which is when we learn that the world is not fair. We all have learned that lesson, I presume. People of God, hear the news for today. You get to decide whether it's good or not. The world is not fair. The universe is not fair. And our God, who loves us to pieces, is not able, ultimately, to protect us from those times when the world does its worst. That the world is unfair is a reality that all of us come to know in ways that are many and varied. That reality will never change. Look at the people crowded this morning at the southern border of our country while here we sit in relative comfort, worshiping. Having said that, we, all of us who live in a world filled with injustice, a world that is indeed not fair, are fully entitled, even invited, to say so. That the world is not fair is a given, but that doesn't mean that it's right. And it definitely does not mean that we have to take it lying down. We can join the crowd of peasants who have received a whiff of freedom in Jesus and raise our voices in loud hosannas in spite of Caesar's threat of retaliation. This week I heard about what sounded to me like an ingenious classroom technique. You folks who are teachers, who are creative, energetic, tireless teachers in our midst, probably know about this. But it seems as if a kindergarten class in the suburbs of Chicago was experiencing an epidemic. Not an epidemic of the measles or the flu or even strep throat. The epidemic was tattling. Turns out that the teacher and her assistants were not able to get any of the teaching done because they were trying to manage all the kids who were coming up to them tattling, reporting to them the gross injustices of their world. Turns out that this knowledge that the world is not a fair place begins to accumulate early in a person's life. Give a group of kindergartners a game to play for an hour and they'll spend 45 minutes arguing about the rules. Kindergartners are all about justice and fairness. And any infringement on that sense of justice gives rise to the tattle that we know so well. So this particular teacher in Chicago created a tattle phone, hung it on the wall, and told the children that when they wanted to tattle on someone, they had to wait and tattle to the phone. The phone was like something that children had never seen. It was old school, it was red, it had one of those big, heavy receivers that you put to your ear. The phone caused quite a stir in the class, and the children were very eager to use it, and they did use it. And then, once the children started using the phone, it occurred to the teacher that it might be interesting to record the tattles on the phone so that parents could hear what their children were tattling about and what kind of injustices they were suffering. Parents everywhere, all of us, know what happens when we ask our kids, hey, what'd you do at school today? No, nothing. What did you learn? No, stuff. But now, with the Tattle phone recordings, the parents had a magic portal into the classroom. So they rigged up a way to record the children once they picked up the receiver and began their tattle. Here are some examples. Eli told me a lie. Seamus wasn't sharing with me, and I don't like it, and I'm upset. Brandon keeps touching me. Ramona's not listening to my teacher, Mr. Evans, but he's my favorite teacher, and I know he's mad at me, but I don't want him to be, so I'm trying my best to listen and not talk to Ramona. My friend Simone said no to me. My friend Jack was in my face while I was waiting to go to an area. That made me really upset. And then there was, people are not sharing the Tattle phone. You get the idea. Kids are learning that the world is not a fair place experientially, and the Tattle phone gives them an opportunity to cry out about the world's injustice without disrupting the class too terribly much. But as we all know, those kindergarten kids grow up a little, and the injustices grow right along with them. Brandon keeps touching me in kindergarten sometimes becomes Brandon keeps touching me in middle school, and it's a different kind of story, isn't it? By high school, lots of kids have run up against the untimely death of a classmate, and no, it's not fair. For some high school kids, those deaths come through the trauma of a school shooting, and no, it is not fair. Some kids graduate from high school and go on to college where the statistics are still pretty accurate that 1 in 4 students will be sexually assaulted at some time during their college years, and it is not fair. College, where privilege will land some kids into schools where they don't deserve to be, and keep others from even bothering to apply, and it's not fair. Freshman dorm on the campus of University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill is typically a pretty safe place to be. There are security cameras. But just down the street a few years ago, next to campus, there's a home. Same can't be said for that. That was where 4 Muslim graduate students used to live before they were killed. And it isn't fair. Word on the street is that jobs are sometimes lost or kept, not as much because of one's abilities, but because of one's willingness to do whatever it happens to be that the boss wants after the door closes, and it's not fair. Some employers have been known to give their workers shifts of 39 hours per week, just shy of the 40 needed to qualify for benefits, and it's not fair. Young men of color are still much more likely than white folks to be arrested and sent to prison, and it's not fair. We all know that the world is not always or even often a fair place. The thing is, it seems to me, is that when we are children and we bump up against those petty injustices, we are encouraged to pick up the Tattle phone, to speak our truth, to name our feelings. But the older we get, the trickier it becomes to speak out, even to cry out against the world's injustices, because there are often people who profit from that injustice. Well, just like the Tattle phone gave those parents a window into what was really going on in their children's lives, this text, the one of Jesus' entry into Jerusalem, gives us a little window into what life was like for the followers of Jesus. On that day, when Jesus appeared to be on the brink of something really special, the people came out in droves. And by praising this would-be king, they all got that one moment on their phone to share the grievances about the ones who really held the power. The other side of all those hosannas, blessed be the name of the Lord, is it's not fair what we go through. But like so many others who hold out hope that justice will be served by naming their own experience of injustice, the people who came out to see Jesus that day were scared back into their homes very quickly by a swift and brutal show of force. We can't be sure how long it took for that vicious Pontius Pilate to get around to eliminating this threat in the form of Jesus of Nazareth. But once there were large and maybe even unruly crowds during Passover of all times, an unruly time anyway, the wheels were set in motion, and as we all know, by Friday he was gone. And it wasn't fair. But before he was taken away, Jesus did get a chance to tell those who took his life away from him, I may be gone soon, the crowds may disperse soon, but rest assured that even after I leave, the world will have taken note of what happened here. The stones have witnessed a great event, and there is nothing that can be done to stop them from singing. And here we are, 2,000 years later, looking through that portal. So, people of God, at least one moral for this Palm Sunday is to remember that when we have been wrong, it is God's desire that we tattle. To pick up the phone and tell the world, it's not fair. When injustice has been visited upon us, it is gospel truth in the form of a silly-looking man riding an even sillier animal that we are urged to name that wrong. And at the end of the day, justice may not be delivered like we had hoped, but in the meantime, the stones will have taken up notice and listened to us. And when the time comes, the good news is they will start to sing.